My mother poisoned me with food I'm allergic to. I've always thought of summer as a season of freedom, the kind of freedom you don't even have to explain long days, warm evenings, and the sense that the world slows down just enough to let you breathe. But this summer was different. It wasn't about freedom. It was about discovering how fragile the life you think you know can be. I had just come home from college for the break. My plan was simple: work a small internship in the city, save up some money, hang out with friends, and spend time with family. Nothing extraordinary, nothing dramatic, just normal. But sometimes normal is the illusion life gives you, right? Before everything changes. At first, I brushed off the little signs. My throat felt tight. Some mornings, my skin itched more than usual, and my eyes watered as though I'd been crying in my sleep. I chalked it up to the office building where I worked, an old place with dusty vents and maybe a touch of mold. I told myself, it's probably nothing. You're just adjusting to the air conditioning. But then things escalated. My eczema flared up, harsher than it had in years. I'd been doing well with it: careful diet, medication when needed, all under control. Yet suddenly, it was like my body had declared war on itself. Patches of skin burned and cracked, nights were restless, mornings unbearable. Still, I tried to explain it away. Weather changes, stress, allergies, anything but what it really was. One evening, I sat at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, while my mother smiled across from me. She always insisted on cooking, always wanted me to eat well, as she put it. That night, it was a chicken dish with a sharp tang in the sauce. I paused after the first bite, tilting my head. Is there lemon in this? I asked casually. She looked up, her face unreadable for a split second, then smiled. No, just seasoning. Maybe a little vinegar. I nodded though. Something in me doubted her words. I was allergic to citrus. Everyone in my family knew that. A serious allergy, the kind you don't play around with. My symptoms had started right after coming home, right after eating her meals again. But my mind refused to believe it. She wouldn't do that. Not her. I pushed the thought aside, because to entertain it was to open a door I wasn't ready for. Days turned into weeks, and my health only worsened. The internship became harder to manage. Sneezing fits at my desk, red swollen eyes during meetings, hands covered with painful rashes. I remember one particular morning when I sat in the bathroom mirror, staring at myself. My skin looked like it was trying to crawl off my body, my throat sore from yet another night of wheezing. I thought about quitting. I thought about running back to college early. But there was this nagging voice inside: figure it out, don't give up yet. So I started tracking everything. What I ate, when I reacted, what the symptoms were like. Slowly, painfully, a pattern emerged. Every time I ate something at home, especially dinner, the reactions intensified. When I ate out with friends or grabbed something simple on the way back from work, I felt a little better. Not great, but noticeably better. And then came the revelation I wasn't prepared for. It was an ordinary afternoon, sunlight pouring through the kitchen window as my mother chopped vegetables. I sat nearby, flipping through my notes, trying to make sense of my worsening condition. She hummed under her breath, like nothing in the world was wrong. Out of nowhere, she said it. You know, I've been adding lemon to your meals lately. Just a little squeeze here and there. I wanted to see if you were still sensitive. Maybe you've outgrown it. The knife in her hand gleamed as she said it, her tone light, almost playful, like she'd revealed a surprise birthday plan. My stomach dropped. You? What? My voice cracked, louder than I intended. She frowned. Don't raise your voice. It was just a test. I thought maybe your allergy wasn't real anymore. Doctors exaggerate things sometimes. I stared at her, unable to process the words. Weeks of illness, nights of pain, my internship hanging by a thread. And all because she had been experimenting on me, without telling me, without asking me. I pushed back from the table, my chair screeching against the floor. I've been sick for weeks. Do you understand what you've done? Her expression shifted, hardening. Oh, stop being dramatic. You always exaggerate. It's not that bad, but it was that bad. And in that moment, a part of me shattered, because I realized this wasn't about a simple mistake. It was about control. About trust being broken in a way that could never be repaired. From that day on, the house didn't feel like home anymore. Conversations turned into arguments. Arguments turned into silence. Whenever I confronted her, she'd twist my words, insisting I was imagining things that my anxiety made. Everything worse. Some nights, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I really was going crazy. Maybe she was right. Maybe my mind was exaggerating. But the burning rashes on my arms and the constant tightness in my throat told a different story. I began to write everything down in detail. Every meal, every symptom, every word she said. It was my only way to hold on to reality. A paper trail against the fog she tried to wrap me in. The breaking point came one rainy night when I woke up gasping for air. My throat felt like it was closing, my chest tight, vision blurring at the edges. I stumbled to the bathroom mirror, clawing at my neck, my skin swollen and red dot in that moment. Fear consumed me. Real, primal fear. This wasn't just about an itch or a rash anymore. This was life-threatening. I sank to the floor, shaking, whispering to myself. She knew, and she still did it. When the reaction finally subsided, I sat there on the cold tiles, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Something inside me clicked. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending this was normal. I needed to take control before it destroyed me. That summer, everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and safety unraveled. And it was only the beginning of a journey that would change me forever. I wish I could say that after that night, the night I almost couldn't breathe, I stormed out of the house and never looked back. That would have made a clean story, wouldn't it? A sharp line drawn between before and after. But life isn't like that. It's messier. It pulls you back into the very places you're desperate to escape. For a few days, I tried to carry on as if nothing had happened. My mother floated around the kitchen like always, humming, preparing meals, asking casual questions about my internship. As though she hadn't admitted to slowly poisoning me. As though she hadn't gaslit me into doubting my own body. A tea first, I avoided her food entirely. I told her I wasn't hungry, that I'd already eaten, that I was dieting. She'd raise an eyebrow, but let it go, though not without leaving comments that burrowed under my skin. Skipping meals again? You'll waste away. Don't be ridiculous. My cooking has always been good for you, but I held my ground. Every meal felt like a test of wills. Every bite avoided was a small victory. The more I resisted, the colder the house became. Silence filled the rooms, heavy and oppressive. She stopped asking about my day, stopped pretending to care about my internship. Instead, she moved like a shadow, quiet but always present, always watching. I began spending longer hours outside, wandering the park after work, sitting in coffee shops until they closed, anything to delay returning home. But eventually, I always did, because where else could I go? I had no money saved, no apartment lined up, and no friend whose couch I could crash on indefinitely. It was a strange kind of prison, the door always unlocked, but escape feeling impossible. To keep myself sane, I leaned on the one habit that still felt like mine, writing. I bought a cheap spiral notebook from a corner store and began recording everything. Every symptom, every meal, every interaction with her. It wasn't just for proof, though deep down I knew I'd need it one day. It was also my anchor. Whenever her words made me doubt myself, I'd flip through the pages and remind myself, no, this is real. You are not imagining it. Look at the pattern. Look at the evidence. Sometimes, late at night, I'd reread the entries and feel a surge of anger so strong my hands shook. Anger at her for what she was doing. Anger at myself for staying. Anger at a world where a parent could betray their child. So casually, but I swallowed that anger. Because where could I put it? What good would it do me if I had nowhere to go? One evening, as thunder rolled outside and rain hammered against the windows, I overheard her on the phone. She didn't notice me lingering in the hallway, notebook pressed against my chest. Yes, he's still here, she said, her tone clipped. Of course, I'm taking care of him. He exaggerates. You know how he is. Always has been sensitive. I froze. Who was she talking to? A relative? A friend? Whoever it was, she was minimizing everything, painting me as dramatic and stable. I stepped into the room before I could think better of it. Who are you talking to? She jumped, eyes narrowing. Don't sneak up on me. Who was it? No one important. She waved her hand dismissively. Just a friend. And don't look at me like that. You've always been too fragile. For your own good. You need thicker skin. Fragile. That word cut deeper than any wound on my body. It was her favorite weapon, one she wielded whenever I tried to assert myself. Fragile, as though my pain wasn't real. Fragile, as though my body's rebellion against citrus was weakness, not survival. I clenched my fists, swallowing the words that wanted to spill out, because I knew it wouldn't matter. To her, nothing I said would ever matter. That night, I lay awake with the rain pounding above me and made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this. I didn't care if I had nowhere to go. I didn't care if my internship collapsed. I needed out, but leaving wasn't as simple as walking out the door. My mother had ways of pulling me back, of making me feel guilty, of convincing me I owed her something. So I needed a plan. First, money. I began squirreling away every dollar I could from my internship. No coffee shops, no takeout, no bus rides. Unless absolutely necessary. Every coin went into an envelope hidden under my mattress. Second, allies. I started reaching out to friends, casually at first, testing the waters. Most were busy with their own lives, their own summer plans, but one friend, David, seemed to notice the strain in my voice. "You okay, man?" He asked one evening when we met for a quick coffee. I hesitated. "How do you tell someone your own mother is slowly destroying you? How do you put that into words without sounding insane?" "I'm dealing with some stuff at home," I said finally. He studied me, his brow furrowed. "If you need a place to crash, even for a night, my couch is open." Seriously, the relief that washed over me was indescribable. It wasn't a solution, not yet, but it was a lifeline. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. It was a Saturday evening, the house filled with the smell of roasted chicken. I walked into the kitchen already suspicious. My mother turned, smiling too brightly. "Dinner's ready," she said. "I'll pass." Her smile faltered. "You need to eat." I said I'll pass. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, her face hardened, her voice dropping. "You think you're smarter than me, don't you? Writing in that little notebook, acting like you know better. You're ungrateful. Everything I do is for you. For me?" I snapped. "You've been lying to me, hurting me. Do you have any idea what I've been going through?" Her eyes blazed. "You're imagining things. Always the victim, always so dramatic. No one else would put up with you the way I do." That was it. The words I needed. The confirmation that she'd never admit, never change, never see me as anything but fragile and broken. I turned on my heel, grabbed the envelope of money from under my mattress, and stuffed it into my backpack. She followed me down the hall, shouting, demanding, accusing, but I didn't stop. My hands shook as I reached for the front door, heart pounding so loud it drowned out her voice, and then, with one final breath, I stepped outside, into the rain, into the unknown. I didn't know where I was going. My shoes were soaked within minutes, the rain plastering my hair to my face, but I kept walking. Every step away from that house felt like a release, like chains snapping one by one. The streets were nearly empty, the storm keeping most people indoors. Neon signs flickered through the downpour, casting strange glows on the wet pavement. I pulled my backpack tighter against me, clutching the envelope of money inside. Eventually, I found myself at David's doorstep, drenched and trembling. I didn't even knock at first, just stood there, debating if I had the right to burden him with my mess. But then the door opened, and there he was, eyes widening in shock. "Jesus, what happened to you?" I can't stay there anymore," I whispered. He didn't ask questions. He just stepped aside, motioned me in, and handed me a towel, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. Lying on David's couch that night, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, I replayed everything in my head. The symptoms, the meals, the confession, the gaslighting, the house that no longer felt like home. Part of me felt guilty for leaving, guilty for burdening a friend. But another part of me felt something I hadn't in a long time, hope, because maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward building a life that belonged to me. I woke up to the sound of rain dripping against the window. For a moment, I didn't recognize the room. The couch beneath me, the unfamiliar blanket, the faint smell of coffee lingering in the air, all of it felt foreign. Then it hit me. I wasn't home. I wasn't under her roof anymore. Relief washed over me, heavy and strange. For the first time in months, maybe years, I'd slept without waking up in the middle of the night, gasping for air. My throat wasn't tight, my skin wasn't burning, and my mind wasn't spiraling in doubt. I had escaped, but freedom doesn't come without a price. David was already in the kitchen when I shuffled in, rubbing sleep from my eyes. He looked up from his coffee and gave me a small smile. "Morning. Feel any better?" I nodded, though my voice cracked when I spoke. "Yeah, a lot better. He studied me for a moment, as if deciding whether to ask the questions hovering in his eyes. Finally, he said, "You don't have to tell me everything right now, but I think you should. At least to someone. Keeping it bottled up isn't going to help." I sank into the chair across from him, wrapping my hands around the mug. He slid toward me. The warmth seeped into my fingers, grounding me. "I will," I whispered. "Just not yet." He nodded, respecting the silence. That was the thing about David. He didn't push. He just gave me space, something I'd never realized I needed until now. The next few days were a blur of adjustment. Living on a friend's couch wasn't glamorous. My backpack sat in the corner like a constant reminder of how little I owned, how unprepared I was for this sudden leap. Money was tight. The envelope under my mattress had barely been enough for small expenses, and I knew it wouldn't last. My internship paycheck helped, but rent, groceries, and transport loomed ahead like storm clouds. Still, I reminded myself anything was better than going back. But with the freedom came anxiety. I jumped at sudden noises, flinched when my phone buzzed, half expecting her name to flash across the screen. When it did, when her messages poured in, filled with accusations and guilt, I stared at them with shaking hands before deleting them. "You'll regret this, after everything I've done for you. You're too fragile to survive on your own." The words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought I'd left behind. But I refused to respond, because deep down, I knew responding meant reopening the door. Sometimes, when the nights were too quiet, memories returned like ghosts. I remembered being 8 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, crying over a plate of food. My throat itched, my skin burned. But when I tried to push the plate away, she scolded me. "Don't be so dramatic," she'd said, forcing the fork back into my hand. "You'll eat what I give you. You're fine." Even then, I'd learned not to trust my own body, to question my instincts, to believe her over myself. It wasn't until years later, when doctors confirmed my allergy, that I realized the truth. I'd been right all along. My body had been screaming, and she'd ignored it. Or worse, she'd chosen not to believe it. The past bled into the present, leaving me restless, unsettled. But alongside the fear came small victories. The first time I bought groceries on my own, I stood in the store for nearly an hour, scanning labels, double-checking ingredients. When I finally cooked a simple meal in David's kitchen, pasta with olive oil and vegetables, I nearly cried with relief. No burning throat, no rashes, just food that nourished me without strings attached. The first time I woke up without anxiety twisting my stomach. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, savoring the quiet. The first time I laughed with David over some dumb joke, the sound startled me. It had been so long since laughter came naturally. Freedom wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was in the little things. The silence of safety, the control of choice, the peace of knowing I could trust myself. Still, trauma doesn't vanish overnight. One evening, David and I sat watching a movie. A simple domestic scene played out. On screen, a mother tucking her child into bed, kissing their forehead. My chest tightened, my throat closing as tears blurred my vision. David muted the TV immediately. "Hey, what's wrong?" I shook my head, unable to speak. How could I explain that something so ordinary felt alien to me? That the image of a loving parent was more fiction than fact in my world? He didn't press. He just sat beside me, his presence steady until my breathing evened out. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I don't know what love is supposed to look like, but I know what it isn't." Over the next weeks, a quiet determination grew inside me. I began looking at apartments, even if I couldn't afford them yet. I researched financial aid, part-time jobs, anything to carve out independence. The more I imagined a future beyond her, the stronger I felt. Of course, doubt lingered. Her words echoed in my head at every turn. "You're too fragile. You can't survive without me." But every day I survived proved her wrong. Every meal cooked, every paycheck earned, every night slept in peace was proof. And though the path ahead was uncertain, I clung to that proof like a lifeline. One night, unable to sleep, I opened my journal and began writing a letter I knew I'd never send. "You hurt me. You made me doubt myself. You told me I was fragile when I was fighting to survive. You broke my trust in ways I'll never fully recover from. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And every day, I grow stronger without you." When I finished, I folded the page and tucked it between the covers. It wasn't for her. It was for me. A declaration, a promise. Weeks later, I caught myself smiling in the mirror. a small, hesitant smile, but real nonetheless. My skin had cleared, my eyes were bright, and for once, the reflection looking back at me didn't feel like a stranger weighed down by fear. I thought about the summer that had started with sickness, with doubt, with betrayal. And I realized it was also the summer I learned to breathe again. The summer I began to rebuild, and though the road ahead would be long, I was finally walking it on my own terms. Freedom was intoxicating, but it was also heavy. The further I got from my mother's house, the more reality pressed down on me. Bills didn't care about my trauma. Rent didn't wait for me to heal. And independence, though liberating, came with a cost I hadn't fully calculated. The envelope of money I had clung to so desperately was dwindling faster than I wanted to admit. Every trip to the grocery store became a mental chess game. Bread or pasta, rice or beans, one vegetable or two. I learned quickly that fresh fruit was a luxury, meat an indulgence. David never said anything, but I caught him slipping groceries into the cart when I tagged along. He'd smile and brush it off. Don't worry about it. I needed this anyway, but I knew he was covering for me. The guilt gnawed at me. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to replace one form of dependence with another. But for now, I had little choice. I threw myself into searching for a place of my own. Craigslist ads, community boards, word of mouth, anything that hinted at a cheap room. Most places were either too expensive, too far from work, or simply unsafe. One landlord looked me up and down, then shook his head. You're too young. I need someone reliable. I wanted to shout, I am reliable. But instead, I walked away, my chest tight. His words echoed the same doubt my mother had planted in me. Too fragile, too weak, too incapable. Still, I refused to give up. Each rejection stung, but it also steeled me. Every no brought me closer to the yes I desperately needed. But independence came at another cost. Panic. It would strike at random on the bus to work, in the middle of making dinner, while lying awake at night. My chest would tighten, my vision blur, my thoughts spiral. I'd hear her voice in my head, you can't survive without me. You'll come crawling back. One night, it hit me so hard I collapsed onto David's kitchen floor, gasping for breath. He rushed in, kneeling beside me. Hey, look at me, he said firmly. You're okay. You're here. Breathe with me. In, out, in, out. I clutched his arm like a lifeline, focusing on his steady rhythm until the storm inside me began to calm. When I could finally speak, my voice was barely a whisper. I thought I was dying. You weren't, he said gently. But I know it felt like it. You've been carrying too much alone. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. I don't want to be like this. You won't always be. But you have to give yourself time. And yet, as much as I tried to move forward, part of me couldn't let go. There were nights when I stared at my phone, hovering over her number. What if she apologized? What if she finally admitted what she'd done? Would I forgive her? Could I? But the apologies never came. Only messages laced with guilt, with blame, with manipulation. You think you're better than me? Don't forget who raised you. You'll never make it without me. Every time I read them, I deleted them. But the words lingered like smoke, a poisonous reminder of the chains I was still breaking. Despite the struggles, there were moments that reminded me I was stronger than I realized. The first paycheck I used to buy my own groceries, entirely mine, without David's help, felt like a milestone. The night I cooked a full meal for both of us and he said, "This is amazing," felt like victory. Even the small act of waking up each morning and choosing not to return home was an act of defiance, of resilience. I was fragile, yes, but I was also fierce. My journal became more than a record. It became a map of my survival. Day 12, ate without reaction. Victory. Day 19, panic attack, but I got through it. Day 25, rejected from another apartment. Still searching. Day 30, laughed with David. Felt real. Flipping through the pages, I could see progress, however slow. Proof that I wasn't standing still, even when it felt like I was sinking. One evening, after weeks of uncertainty, I stood in front of the mirror and studied myself. My skin had healed. My eyes were clear. My body no longer carried the constant tension of fear. For the first time, I saw someone who wasn't defined by their mother's control. Someone scarred, yes, but not broken, and I whispered to my reflection, "You're going to make it." The road ahead was still uncertain. Rent loomed, jobs were scarce, and the weight of trauma lingered. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the fight, because I'd already faced the worst betrayal from the one person who was supposed to protect me. And if I could survive that, I could survive anything. That summer, I didn't just learn independence. I learned resilience. I learned what it meant to rebuild, piece by piece, until the fragments formed something new, and though I didn't know where the road would end, I knew one thing for certain: I would never go back. Independence wasn't just about money or housing. It was about truth. And truth, I was realizing, was the hardest currency of all. For weeks, I'd carried my story like a stone in my chest, heavy, unspoken, poisoning me from the inside. I'd hinted to David, I'd skirted around it, but I hadn't told him everything. Part of me was afraid that if I said the words out loud, they'd sound too unreal, too unbelievable, but secrets rot in silence. And I was tired of carrying the weight alone. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. We'd ordered cheap pizza, something greasy and comforting, and sat on the floor of his apartment watching reruns. But my mind wasn't on the show. My chest felt tight, my hands restless. Finally, I blurted it out. "I need to tell you something." David muted the TV and turned to me, giving his full attention. "Okay," I hesitated, staring at the slice of pizza in my hand. Then slowly, haltingly, the words spilled out. I told him about the allergies, about the meals, about the lemon she'd been slipping into my food. I told him about the nights I couldn't breathe, the rashes that tore my skin apart, the gaslighting that made me question my sanity. I told him about the journal, the confrontation, the stormy night when I finally walked out. When I finished, my voice was shaking. She knew I was allergic. She knew, and she still did it. And then she made me feel like I was crazy for noticing. David sat in silence for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, his eyes fixed on mine. Finally, he spoke. "That's horrifying. I don't even know what to say, except, I believe you." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. My shoulders sagged, my chest loosened. For weeks, I'd been bracing for doubt, for dismissal, for someone to say, "You're exaggerating." But instead, he gave me belief, and in that belief, I felt seen for the first time. With the truth finally spoken, I turned my focus back to survival. Money remained tight, and my internship barely covered necessities. I knew I needed more, so I picked up odd jobs wherever I could. Babysitting for a neighbor, dog walking, late night, shifts at a convenience store. Each dollar felt like a step toward independence, a brick in the foundation I was trying to build. It was exhausting. Some nights, I stumbled home so tired I could barely stand. But the exhaustion felt different now. It wasn't the weariness of being poisoned in my own home. It was the fatigue of progress, of effort, of building something that was mine. One afternoon, while walking back from the store, I saw her, my mother. She was standing across the street, holding a bag of groceries, her expression sharp as her eyes locked onto mine. My stomach dropped, my body freezing mid-step. For a moment, time stopped. The noise of the city faded, the people rushing around us blurred. All I could see was her, the woman who had hurt me, who had made me doubt my own body, who had called me fragile. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stared, her face a mask I couldn't read, and then, without a word, she turned and walked away. I stood there, trembling, my pulse racing. Part of me wanted to chase after her, to demand answers, to scream. Another part of me wanted to vanish into the ground, but I did neither. I just stood still until she disappeared into the crowd. That night, the panic returned. I lay awake, heart pounding, replaying the encounter over and over. Her face, her silence, her turning away. What did it mean? Was she watching me? Did she want me back? Or worse, was she waiting for me to fail so she could say, "I told you so"? David found me pacing the living room, tears in my eyes. "She was there," I whispered. "I saw her." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "And you walked away. You didn't go back." That's strength, not weakness. I wanted to believe him. But the shadows of her voice clung to me, whispering. Doubts. In the days that followed, I thought a lot about reconciliation, about whether there was a version of the story where I could forgive her, where we could rebuild something broken. But every time I pictured it, I remembered the nights I couldn't breathe, the rashes that scarred my skin, the words she hurled at me when I tried to defend myself. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some relationships can't be mended without acknowledgement, and she had given me none. So I made a choice, not to forgive, not yet, maybe not ever, but to live without needing her apology, to live for myself, not for her. With each passing week, I felt stronger. My panic attacks grew less frequent, my journal filled with more victories than losses. I found a cheap room to rent with strangers, far from perfect, but mine nonetheless. On the day I moved in carrying my meager belongings in a backpack and a borrowed suitcase, David stood in the doorway and grinned. "Look at you. First place of your own." I laughed, tears in my eyes. "It's small, it's yours," he said simply, and he was right. For the first time, I had a space that was mine. A space no one could invade, no one could poison, no one could twist into something unsafe. It wasn't just a room. It was proof. Proof that I could build a life beyond her. That night, sitting cross-legged on the floor of my new room, I opened my journal and wrote, Day 67, "Today, I moved into my first apartment. It's not much, but it's mine. I'm scared. I'm hopeful. I'm free." When I closed the notebook, I smiled to myself, because for the first time, I wasn't writing just to survive. I was writing to remember. Moving into my own place was supposed to be the victory lap, the final step of breaking free. And in many ways, it was. But freedom, I learned, comes with its own kind of silence. The room was small, barely enough space for a bed and a desk, with peeling paint on the walls and a single window that looked out onto an alley. My roommates were strangers, polite enough, but busy with their own lives. At first, I told myself I didn't mind. I had independence. I had safety. That was enough. But when the evenings grew quiet, the loneliness crept in. At home, I'd hated the silence because it was filled with her presence, her eyes, her judgments, her control. Here, the silence was emptier, but in some ways more frightening. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, the hum of the fridge down the hall barely audible, and realize no one was watching. No one was telling me what to eat, when to sleep, how to live. The freedom was exhilarating and terrifying because now every choice was mine. Every mistake mine, every success mine. Sometimes I missed the illusion of structure, even if that structure had been suffocating. David didn't let me drown in the loneliness. He visited often, bringing takeout or just hanging out on the floor with me. We'd talk about music, movies, dreams, anything but the shadow of my mother. One night, he looked around the tiny room and laughed. "You've done it. You've officially joined the starving young adult club." I chuckled. Feels like I skipped the initiation ritual and went straight to the poverty badge, but behind the jokes, I felt something deeper growing. Gratitude. Maybe even something beyond that. David had been my anchor through the storm, the steady presence when everything else crumbled. And now, with the safety of my own room, I began to realize how much I leaned on him. It was late one evening when my phone buzzed with a notification. A new message from her. At first, I almost deleted it without looking. But curiosity got the better of me. "I just want to talk. I think you've misunderstood me. You always exaggerate, but I forgive you. Come home, and we can put this behind us." My stomach twisted. The same pattern, the same manipulation. No apology, no acknowledgement, just blame disguised as forgiveness. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I set the phone face down on the desk and stared at the ceiling, fighting the pull of old chains. For days, I wrestled with the message. Part of me wanted to answer, to scream at her, to demand the apology I deserved. Another part of me wanted to walk away completely, to erase her number and never look back. In the end, I chose silence. Not out of weakness, but strength. Because silence was control. Silence was me choosing not to be dragged back into her game. I realized then that reconciliation wasn't something I owed her. Healing wasn't about her words, it was about mine. One afternoon, while scrolling through my phone, I stumbled on a forum where people shared personal stories about surviving difficult families. I read post after post, each one raw and painful, yet strangely comforting. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in my struggle, and then a thought struck me. What if I told my story? What if my pain could help someone else feel less isolated? The idea scared me. My story was messy, vulnerable, personal, but it also felt necessary. Because if speaking out could stop even one person from doubting themselves the way I had, maybe all the suffering would have meaning. That night, I opened my journal, flipped to a fresh page, and began writing not just for myself, but for others. Sharing my story was the scariest thing I had ever done. I typed the words late at night, the glow of my laptop illuminating the small room I now called home. My hands trembled as I described the truth, the allergies, the secret lemon, the Gaslighting, the nights of panic. Every detail felt like tearing open a scar. But with each sentence, I felt lighter, as if the weight I'd been carrying was finally shifting. When I hit post on that forum, my heart raced. I almost deleted it immediately. What if no one believed me? What if they said I was exaggerating, just like she did? But instead, something unexpected happened. The next morning, I woke to dozens of replies. This sounds exactly like my experience. Thank you for sharing. I thought I was alone. You're stronger than you know. Strangers from across the world, people I'd never met, were echoing my pain and offering kindness. For the first time, I felt part of something bigger. My story wasn't just mine, it was part of a pattern, part of a community of survivors who had turned their suffering into solidarity. I cried reading those replies, not out of sadness, but out of relief, because I wasn't alone, and I never had been. Of course, my mother wasn't done. A week later, another message appeared on my phone. This one was different, softer, more pleading. I miss you. I know I've made mistakes, but you're my child. Families should stay together. Please, just come home. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the longing for reconciliation, for some version of a mother who would finally love me the way I deserved. But then I remembered the silence after she admitted what she had done, the gaslighting, the lack of remorse, and I realized forgiveness was not the same as returning. I typed a single reply. I'm building my life now. Without you. Please. Respect that. Then I blocked her number. The final chain snapped. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. Money was still tight, rent still loomed, panic still whispered in the back of my mind. But there was a difference now. The difference was hope. I continued posting on that forum, turning my journal entries into stories. People reached out, asking for advice, thanking me for giving them courage. Slowly, I began to see my pain not just as a wound, but as a tool, a way to help others escape the same shadows. David, always at my side, became more than an anchor. He became family. The kind you choose, not the kind you're given. Together, we laughed more, dreamed more, planned more. And for the first time, the future didn't terrify me. One evening, sitting by the window of my tiny room, I opened my journal and wrote, Day 120. I survived. I escaped. I built a life of my own. I am not fragile. I am not broken. I am free. I closed the notebook and smiled. This chapter of my life was ending. A new one was just beginning. Looking back, that summer was the hardest of my life. It broke me in ways I didn't think I could recover from, but it also remade me. It taught me resilience, independence, and the power of my own voice. I don't know if my mother will ever understand what she did. I don't know if she'll ever change, but I no longer live for her acknowledgement or her approval or her apology. I live for me, and in that truth, I found peace.